One largest log cabin in Arizona. When that was built, there was nothing else out here. It was out in the boonies.
Oh, wow.
They call it the Museum Club because it started out as a taxidermy museum, but in the 1940s they converted it to a zoo out here. That wasn't until 1980. Prior to that, this right here was the main drag to California, LA. So a lot of talent came rolling down this highway. They have autographed photos on the walls of the Museum Club of people that have performed there, including Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Asleep at the Wheel, all kinds of good bands. Hole in a place where they have music. That's kind of historic Arizona place. They have an old saloon type bar in the back that they use on special occasions, and it's worth going in just getting a photo of that. Looks like it's right out of an old Western movie.
Yeah, we did the Kingman to Settlement.
Okay.
But there wasn't a whole lot wrong there, was there? Was there?
Well, there you're driving through a lot of the Wallapai Indian Reservation town, and so it started out as the Atlantic Pacific Railway. Then shortly after was renamed the Santa Fe Line, and today it's the tracks are used by Burlington Northern Santa Fe, one of the busiest freight lines in the world. Every 24 hours we have 80 trains coming through Flagstaff.
Wow.
So you generally don't have to wait long. Actually, when you're crossing, because it goes right through the middle of town, so it's kind of part of the deal living in Flagstaff. You always have to plan a few extra minutes because you might catch a train. And we get some trains that are up to 3 miles long. It can take a while for that to get through, So of course you have to slow down when they're going through town. Right after that in June, we have the pipeline fire. That's the one that burned higher up, those taller peaks sticking up. So between the two of them, pretty well cleaned off the whole east side of that mountain, and 35 homes burned up off to the left here.
We don't know how many homes
But well, we do. It was human caused. Both fires. Sad to say, April, May, June. We get lots of visitors coming out here that likely are not aware of how dry it gets. Because that time of year we can get 50-mile-an-hour winds combined with 3 to 6% humidity.
Oh, wow.
That's a recipe for fire. And that's what happened here on the mountain. Some campers started a fire. And they put up electronic signs on the highways. Like when it gets that bad, they put in a complete fire ban. And they don't even want you lighting a charcoal barbecue in your backyard in town. So to go up there in the forest and light a campfire, pretty irresponsible. They caught the one guy, but I think he only spent a week or 2 in jail. That was it. You know what I think they should do? Perfect payback for doing something that foolish. Make them go plant trees for every weekend for a year, something like that. Just plant trees.
But some live in California, we had a lot of fires there too.
Oh yeah, I know, and it's pretty sad because that should be all green. So what you're seeing now, the big peak, and back up against the sky there, that's Mount Humphreys, and that's the tallest peak in the San Francisco Peaks. Tops out at 12,633 feet. Now, something to consider as we look at this mountain, it's actually all one mountain. We call it the San Francisco Peaks because it's a stratovolcano that blew its top about 400,000 years ago. Now, get this, before that eruption, we had one single peak to our left that they say looked like Mount Fuji in Japan. And was a mile higher than what we have now. It was almost 17,000 feet. So that means before the eruption, this was the tallest peak in all what we call the lower 48 states today. Because Mount Whitney, the tallest peak, is in the Sierra Nevada range, and that's just under 15,000. This is a couple thousand feet higher elevation. Now this pass that we're going up and over right now is essentially the landmass that used to be the top of that mountain, because it was a combination eruption and collapse of the mountain. It was very steep-sided, unstable, and they say it blew out the side of it too, very much like the eruption of Mount St. Helens up in Washington State back in May of 1980. So they learned a lot about this eruption from studying St. Helens, and it all blew out this way. So this is all, well, you can see, look at the right, it's all cinders and basalt.
What year was this?
So it was about 400,000 years ago when this happened. So not in recent history. And that's all right here, this next road to your right. And it has two national monuments. Wapatki is some Pueblo ruins on the north side. But starting right here, you go into the right, and that starts a 35-mile loop that'll take you through Sunset Crater first. Then you get to the east, tremendous overviews of the Painted Desert. It's really spectacular. And it makes a big U-shaped loop and then comes back to Highway 89 further north. And I'm going to show you where that is when we go by it. And the climate gets warmer and drier. For each 1,000 feet of elevation change, you have a temperature change of 4.5 to 5 degrees. As you go down, it gets hotter. As you go up, it gets cooler. This is what gets people into trouble hiking in the Grand Canyon. As they come here in the summer and up on the rim, pretty comfortable. Maybe in the mid 80s is usually our hottest temperature. But that time of year down the bottom, it can be 105, 110 degrees. Same climate as Phoenix at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And if you're not prepared for that temperature change, well, there's a reason they have to do 250 search and rescues every year in the Grand Canyon, and mostly during the summertime. This is when people have the time to come here, and I don't even hike down there in the summer. I wait till but another couple weeks. This is unusual, having these 80-degree temperatures this far into the fall. We got a high pressure dome that's just sort of parked here and bringing up. It's about 10 to 12 degrees above normal right now. So, but I know how it goes up here. Probably 2 more weeks we'll be looking at a foot of snow. They used to have gas pumps, and that's where the stars Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda were filling up their motorcycles in the beginning of the movie, right there in front of that. About the first third of that movie was filmed right here around Flagstaff, and since I do happen to ride a motorcycle and it's of interest to me, I'll pass these around. These are some screenshots from the movie, and right there, first one is the building we just passed with those guys out front. That's from back in 1969 when they filmed the movie. And there's a few other shots in there of them coming through downtown Flagstaff on Route 66. One of the scenes in the movie, I don't have it there, but they're camped by some Indian ruins one night. They got a campfire. Well, that was out here at the Wapatki ruins. Yeah, you can see in there there's snow on the peaks. 9 months out of the year, average, there's snow up there. So we had snow, well, put it this way, they were skiing at it's called the Arizona Snow Bowl. And by the way, we're doing a loop today, so we're not coming back this way. We're going up and in the East Gate, and we're going to follow 25 miles of the south rim of the Grand Canyon in the park today. Then we'll exit through the main gate to the west and be coming down just on the other side of these hills. About 20 miles to the west is Highway 180, and that'll bring us right through the western foothills of the San Francisco peaks. And on that side, you'll be able to see the ski trails as we come back this afternoon. So they were skiing up on that mountain right through the first weekend of June this year. And the last bit of snow up on Mount Humphreys didn't melt clear till July 15th. And we've already had a dusting of snow up there. Well, a little more than a dusting because it lasted 3 days. So they probably had close to a foot of snow up there about a week and a half ago. It just didn't stick. But so basically 2 months is all it's been totally snow-free. than later because they estimate a frequency of about every 1,000 years that we have volcanic activity, generally a cinder cone being formed. Well, Sunset Crater, 950 years ago. So that means in the next 50 years, we could be looking at a volcanic eruption in this region. You can see those are all lava rocks. You have the hill to your left.
That's cool.
A lot of volcanic material on this side. You'll notice as we're going down in elevation, you look out over the juniper forest to your right, quite a few dead trees, and that just took place over the last 3 to 4 years because we've been in a prolonged drought over 20 years. Now, thankfully, the last 2 winters we've had pretty good snowpacks, which have helped mainly in bringing up the levels in the reservoirs. Lake Powell is up this way. This road 89 takes you right up to Page, Arizona, where the Glad Canyon Dam is, and that's where Lake Powell begins in Arizona, but most of it's up in Utah. And then out by Vegas, the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. Well, those are the 2 largest man-made reservoirs in the United States at either end of the Grand Canyon, filled by the Colorado River. Well, we went through a 20-year period of pretty diminished snowpack in the Rockies, and that's meant the reservoirs were dropping consistently every year for like 20 years. And the last spring, not this past one, but 23, interference with power lines. Sorry about that. Anyway, they were down to 22.5% the spring of 23 before the snowpack melted. And we had a big snowpack that year, so it brought it up to about 30% then. Last year's snowpack this spring brought them up, Lake Powell, at least up to about 40%. It's dropped a little bit, but at least these last 2 years, the point is, the first 2 years in over 20 years that the reservoirs started to rise again. And boy, it was getting dangerously close to what they call dead pool, because they're hydroelectric and they wouldn't have been able to generate power. I want to show you something. Can slow down for a minute. Look by the phone pole with that old dead juniper. You're going to see 3 white faces painted on there. Okay, so that's called the Wapatki totem on the map, and that's painted. Those are Hopi Kachina spirit faces. They're to greet the Kachinas when they bring rainfall. So the Kachinas are deities of nature the Hopi pray to, and the Hopi live on the horizon to your right. Those bumps on that ridge way out there where it's a little hazy, that's Hopi land. They've been there for thousands of years. So they call those mountains the Kachina peaks because they believe that's where these spirits live. And then when we have our monsoon season, which starts around June 15th and runs through September 15th, so we just wrapped that up. That's when we get most of our rainfall for the year, and that's when the Hopi believe those Kachinas come down out of the mountain and grace this landscape with much needed rainfall. And when you're a farming culture, boy, it's pretty important to have a connection and know when to plant when the rain's coming. Well, the Hopi obviously know what they're doing. They've survived in the desert Southwest, pretty dry climate for several thousand years. They're the oldest tribe in the area. You see coming up here on the right, the sign for Wapatki National Monument, because we're coming up on the other end of that 35-mile loop that started in the past by Sunset Crater, loops around by the Painted Desert, comes back out right here. So you're right in there where that white truck is. So it's from this end, it's about 12 miles in to the Wapatki Pueblo and Visitor Center. Now, since I have been guiding for 15 years in northern Arizona, during that time I've had an opportunity to take a walk out here with some National Park Service archaeologists. It's very interesting. They said that Wapatki itself was a village center for this thriving farming culture that was really at its peak during the 1100s in this region. And they said that in addition pueblos all spread throughout this region, mainly just starting about 8-10 miles east of here, so you can't see anything from here. But once you go over to where the land drops into the basin of the Painted Desert, there's ruins all over the place. They've identified over 2,500 dwelling sites out there, and get this, over 12,000 agricultural sites throughout this whole region. Little farms, garden plots. And the reason they had so many is when we get the monsoons, they can be really hit or miss, not usually a wide blanket of rain. I've driven this road before and seen it pouring buckets on one side, sun's out on the other. So you spread your crops out to get a better chance of catching some of that rain. Now this was all after the eruption of Sunset Crater, which made conditions ideal for farming here. Covered the landscape around us in a thick layer of volcanic ash and cinders, rich in nutrients from deep in the earth, that acted as a mulch, holding moisture at the surface. So what they were growing, commonly known as the Three Sisters, a very symbiotic trio of planting. They plant them all together, starting first. Yeah, it's cutting it close there, buddy. So they plant the corn first and let those corn stalks grow, get a little bit of height to them first, and then they plant the beans underneath the corn, because beans like to climb as they grow, and they can climb the corn stalks. Also, beans will fix nitrogen into the soil for natural fertilizer for uptake by the corn. And then finally the squash underneath it all, with those nice broad leaves, makes a good ground cover, keeps your grasses and weeds down, also helps to shade the soil and retain soil moisture. So it was the Hopi ancestors out here doing all the farming. In their language, their name for their ancestors, Kasat-Sano. I mean, that's a Hopi word. Basically translates as those who lived long ago. So they were the farmers out here growing the corn, beans, and squash. Also, there's evidence they were growing cotton and weaving elaborate textiles for trading purposes. So cotton requires quite a bit more water, and it was a wetter climate 900 years ago. They were out here farming. By the early to mid 1200s, they had abandoned this area and traveled to the east to the Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico, basically for more water, because they had experienced a prolonged drought here that they say lasted 65 years. So kind of forced them out. That's why they left the area. So I want to point out, we're driving through a big private ranch. There's some of the horses for the Babbitt Ranch, and it's the name of it, same family that bought it in the 1800s. The Babbitt brothers, all 5 of them, came down here from Cincinnati, Ohio. So hey guys, you got a little bit of Ohio around you here, because you know what they originally called this ranch? The C&O Bar Ranch, and that C&O stood for Cincinnati, Ohio. They wanted to honor their hometown, and that was the brand they used for their animals. It was C&O and a bar under it. This ranch, everything we've been driving through, all this open land, everything you see laid out in front of you, both sides of the highway, this ranch covers 746,000 acres of land. It's about a 750,000 acre ranch we're driving through. Yeah, they do.
Why do they have 2 horses on
Oh, they got more, trust me. There's the ranch headquarters over to your right. They call it the Spiderweb Camp. Been there since the 1800s. And that's where they have their annual auction. If you look on the side to the right, see the C&O and the bar in there? There you go, Cincinnati, Ohio.
That's pretty
Now, the thing is, nowadays they refer to it as Babbitt Ranch. It's the same family. They don't brand anymore. So they don't use that C&O bar brand. They put GPS tags on the animals' ears. You know?
Makes sense.
But I mean, it's still on the sign. It's still the C&O bar. But it's the Babbitt family. It's the same family as Bruce Babbitt, who was governor of Arizona in the 80s.
Yeah.
And went on to become the Secretary of Interior in the United States in the 90s under President Clinton. So, same family. They're a pretty big family name in Flagstaff. You got see a banner. They put up a new one each year for the Babbitt Ranch's annual Hash Knife Cold Sale, they call it. They came up with a whole new design this year. They did a nice job. They got an actual photo of the cowboys doing the roundup of the horses. And this is a really big deal because this auction has been going on for over 100 years. And they have it at the headquarters I just pointed out. Here's the banner off to our right. They have it that first part of July every year. So the ranchers come here from as far north as Montana to get a crack at some of these horses because this ranch has an excellent reputation for the bloodlines on their quarter horses. And quarter horse is the preferred horse for ranch work. Very strong, agile, lots of endurance, very smart. Have you ever seen that show Yellowstone?
Yes, it
I've got
was.
plenty of Hollywood in there, but I'll tell you, the ranch and stuff, and the horse stuff is pretty authentic because the producer, Taylor Sheridan, he's a Texas cowboy. He's the real deal. So they have some pretty good footage there. Yes. And so it's a good example of what quarter horses can do. Some of the shows where they're in the competitions.
Do they do rodeo horses at all?
Cowboys here.
Sell the rodeos,
Yeah, Prescott, Arizona is home to the oldest, longest running rodeo in the world. And that's the old territorial capital when this was the Arizona and New Mexico territory. Now this ranch is huge, right? So it gets 20 miles to the east and gets up in elevation to 8,000 feet, where you have much denser grasses, better grazing. So that's why you're not seeing too many animals right now, because they're up in the high country, getting in some of that grass before it gets buried deep under snow. Because at 8,000 feet, 4 to 6 feet of snow covering that grass in the winter. So then they rotate them down here. For water, over to your left, they have water tanks that can bring in tanker trucks off the highway, fill that up. Now in the back country with limited access, the big shallow ponds, put dirt berms around them to catch the rainfall from the monsoons and snow melt from the winter, and that's how they get the water for the animals. You see, the animals out here are open range
I was
grazing.
going to ask you that.
Yeah, they don't go back to a barn
Free
at night
range,
to
yeah.
be fed water. So that's why they need so much land. Because when it's sparse vegetation like you see here, it takes about 50 acres per animal for grazing. Now where you all are from, the Midwest, with all that nice thick grass, 1
Right.
or 2 acres
Yeah.
would be enough for a cow or a horse. But totally different story out here. So if you're going to have a ranch here, you're going to have a big one. It's kind of unusual though, a private ranch. Most of the ranching is done on public lands, because this was bought in the 1800s, probably a penny an acre, Nowadays, ranchers can't afford to buy a big chunk of land like this, so they can get grazing rights and a lease from the federal government. They can graze on federal lands, of which we got plenty of, because Arizona, only 20% of the land here is privately owned. The rest is federal and state land and Indian reservation, because we're going to be entering onto Navajo Nation just up ahead past this little town of Gray Mountain. So the ranch ends right up here. Now this little town, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. It was built in the 1960s by NASA when they were training the astronauts out here. They did quite a bit of testing out on in the painted desert of their lunar rover, that they would be driving on the moon. So this little enclave of buildings was support for that training mission that went for many years. So the first building on the right here is an old hotel for observers to watch the astronauts train. During the lockdown, a local artist got bored, painted it up, so did a nice job there. And these were barracks off to the right for astronauts and their families to stay. So this whole little enclave here, this was a pretty busy place back in the 1960s when they were doing that training. So, they were also training out at Sunset Crater Volcano, and if you go out there by the lava fields, they have a plaque to commemorate that every astronaut that ever walked on the the surface of the moon first walked through those lava fields at Sunset Crater. So that's why they have the astronaut there on Route 66, because Flagstaff is the base of operations for all their training for the first mission to the moon. So up at Lowell Observatory, that's where they charted out the surface of the moon to determine where they would land. So they have a nice museum up there, and lots of stuff on the astronauts out here. So right here, we enter onto Navajo Nation. To the right, that tablet says Boundary, Navajo Reservation, U.S. Department of Interior. So we're officially in Indian country now, and this is the largest reservation in the United States. Everything you see out there, well beyond, all part of Navajo Nation. Not only does it cover the entire northeastern corner of Arizona, it goes into northwestern New Mexico and up into southern Utah. So this reservation covers parts of 3 different states. Now here's perspective you guys can relate to, because it's kind of close to where y'all are from. You can fit the entire U.S. state of West Virginia inside this reservation with room to spare. So this is bigger than the state of West Virginia. It's the largest reservation in the United States. Now, the Navajo, they look at it as one entity, Navajo Nation. And I want to point something out to you, because it could be a little bit confusing. Because their reservation goes into New Mexico and Utah, and those 2 states observe daylight savings time, which means they move their clocks forward 1 hour in the spring. Well, they do that here on this part of the reservation, so that the whole reservation is the same time. And I point this out because you might look at your cell phone and might be doing a little dance between time zones, because it's 9:30, but I see my dad on my computer for the rig here is saying 10:30, right? I'm looking at 2 different times here. That's why I always bring my own little clock here, you know, to avoid any confusion. I'm like, I know what time we're on. And so yeah, just wanted to point that out, because even at our first stop up in the park at Desert View, we're still pretty close to Navajo Nation, and your phone might still reflect that. It's later time, but as we start working to the west, should change. I do recommend when we're up, well, even now, they're not big on cell towers out here, and if you want to conserve your batteries today, if you just flip it on airplane mode, that way you can take all your photos, and trust me, your batteries will last longer, because it won't be continually searching for a signal. So these stands you see off to the right, the tribe lets members set up and sell jewelry, pottery, rugs, things like that. By the way, if you were interested in doing a little bit of shopping today, either for some Native American items, jewelry, what have you, or some Grand Canyon items, our last stop of the day at Grand Canyon Village at El Tovar Hotel and Hopi House. Hopi House is a 2-floor beautiful gift shop. They have all kinds of things in there. And El Tovar Hotel as well, in the lobby area, they have a few different gift shops there. So there'll be some time allotted at the end of the day for you guys to have a little bit of time on your own shopping. And it's right there with views of the canyon as well on the rim. So Navajo Nation, this is the not only the largest reservation in the United States, this is the largest tribe with over 300,000 registered members. And looking around, you probably wondering where they all are. Well, there's no requirement for them to live here anymore. So only about half of the tribe lives here, about 150,000 people. Now, so think about this. If West Virginia only had 150,000 people living in it, it'd be pretty sparse, right? So that's why a lot of open space. And they have their own school system, by the way. Over to your left, Navajo Elementary School. They still teach their children their native language of Dene, and It's the original name of these people, spelled D-I-N-E, like the word dine, but pronounced Dene. And the Dene migrated here about 1,000 years ago as fairly primitive clans of hunter-gatherers coming from up north in Alaska and northwestern Canada, from the region of the Athabascan-speaking people. This would, for example, include the Inuits of Alaska, which means today. I think that's the last of our power lines. Yeah, because this thing works off radio frequency, and so those kind of kick in on it. So that means today a Navajo and Dene, they could sit down and converse. They both share that root Athabascan language. Now you hear me using two different names for these people, Navajo and Dene. So their original name, Dene, when they first arrived here as hunter-gatherers 1,000 years ago. And then it was in the early 1500s when we had Spanish conquistadors, soldiers, part of the Coronado expedition that had ridden up here by horseback from Mexico, searching for gold in this region in the early 1500s. And they were trading, interacting with these Dene people and being hunter-gatherers. They were known to wear a large knife strapped across their chest. And the name for that knife in Spanish is Navaja. So the Spanish guys just started calling these people Navaja in the 1500s, and the name, just kind of hung on and stuck. And eventually they started saying it Navajo, and now that name's more commonly used and recognized than their original name of Dene. As you can see to your left, we're on the reservation, and that sign says Navajo Arts and Crafts, because they know more tourists will recognize that name. But both are still appropriate names to use. Older members of the tribe usually will
Sometimes
slow
they don't
down,
get
everybody,
along.
when you come into these circles. I zoomed right on in on it. Okay, so we're going to change direction, get on Highway 64 to our right, 89. That takes you up to Page, Lake Powell, Horseshoe Bend, Antelope Canyon. That's a whole other tour we do. Here we're about 30 miles from our first viewpoint, 27 miles from the East Gate to Grand Canyon National Park. A lot of people don't know about this gate. It's the same distance from Flagstaff to either gate. So it works out to make a nice loop tour like we'll be doing today. I want to point out, coming up on the left, that's a Navajo Hogan, spelled H-O-G-A-N. You see a lot of those type of buildings on the reservation, and even off, because we have a lot of Navajo living in Flagstaff. My neighbor has Hogan in his yard. He's a Navajo guy. It's an octagonal-shaped structure reflecting the original Hogans that were made out of like adobe mud over a wood framework made out of juniper, and they like the circular living space because they are somewhat superstitious in that they believe bad spirits can take up residence in 90-degree corners in your home. Well, if you live in a circle, that solves that problem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you see plenty of houses out here today that obviously would have corners in them. And if they are feeling a bit superstitious, it would not be uncommon to go in there and see where they have pruned branches off of the junipers, and they'll stand a juniper branch in each corner, and they believe that wards off any bad spirits or bad energy. A bit of Navajo feng shui there. One last also, when they have a funeral on the reservation, as family and friends are coming into the cemetery, they build a fire out of juniper wood, and you walk through the smoke of that as you come into the cemetery. They believe that purifies and cleanses you, and also keeps any bad spirits from coming into the cemetery. You can see off to your right another little Hogan. It's a common setup where you have like the main house and a Hogan that's used either as a guest home or maybe a mother-in-law apartment or for ceremonies, storage, what have you. Pretty common structure to see out here. Nice view of Mount Humphreys to our left. Looks a little different from the north side. And we'll be kind of checking in on the San Francisco peaks, because even when we get up to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, there's some points where we can still see the peaks that are, when we get up there, they're about 80 miles away. Now this area right here is all part of, this is all reservation land. This is all Navajo, and it's a big sheep ranch. That's one of the mainstays of the economy on the reservation is sheep ranching. Now this was introduced to them in the 1500s when the Spanish soldiers were up here, because they were traveling with livestock. They had cattle and goats and sheep, and they were riding European horses. So when Coronado set sail out of Spain to head to the New World, he was heading to Mexico. At that time, Mexico was called New Spain. So Cortez and Pizarro, two other Spanish explorers, had already sailed to Mexico and South America and discovered gold with the Aztecs and Incas, and started the whole sort of gold fever thing going with the Spanish. Therefore, Coronado was sent out with orders to bring back gold and riches. So when he loaded up his army on the ships in Spain, he had to be self-sufficient, not only for crossing the Atlantic, but when they were traveling, searching for gold. So they brought cattle, goats, and sheep on the ships, as well as European horses. Now, to take care of all of the animals, the soldiers had other duties. Coronado brought Basque people with him on the trip to the New World. These are indigenous people from the Pyrenees Mountains in the north of Spain, and they're known to be really good with handling livestock. The Basque are good ranchers, so they were, along with the conquistadors, taking care of all the animals. And that's when they discovered, when they were up here in the 1500s, that they found that the sheep were pretty best adapted to this high desert climate, with less water available. Smaller animal needs less water. And the other key thing is sheep can sustain themselves by just grazing on sagebrush, because we don't have a whole lot of grasses here. So mainly the monsoons in the summer, snow melt in the winter, and it comes up through the Painted Desert, winds through here, joins the Grand Canyon right out in front of us. So if you look out to the horizon, a little off to the right, you see that flat top reddish mountain, Cedar Mountain, that's called, sits right on the rim of the Grand Canyon. You'll be looking right at that from our first viewpoint on top of the monocline, just to the left of that. Now behind Cedar Mountain, you see the sun hitting some lighter colored cliffs on the horizon. That is the North Rim, the other side of the canyon. And you can see that because the North Rim averages 1,000 feet higher than the South Rim of the Grand Canyon. South Rim averages 7,000 feet, North Rim 8,000. That's why we're seeing it over there. Now, if you had never been here before, you'd have no way of knowing what lies between those two features. On the horizon, you get the Grand Canyon. Now, the dimensions of the Grand Canyon, they measure the length of it in mile markers on the Colorado River as it winds through the bottom of the canyon. And it starts north of us here, up near Page, at a place called Lee's Ferry. That's mile marker 0. From there, the river pretty much winds north to south for about 65 miles. And right below our first viewpoint, kind of right over where that red mountain is where everything swings around following the river, canyon included, and heads off to the west. So most of the Grand Canyon runs east to west. The western end of the canyon, out by Lake Mead, is a place called Pierce Ferry, and that's mile marker 277. So that's the length of the canyon, 277 miles long, the equivalent of driving from New York City to Washington, D.C. on the East Coast. It averages over 5,000 foot deep, over a mile deep, and across rim to rim averages about 10 miles get up into outer space to see this whole thing. And highest flying jet won't do it. At the bottom of this hill, looking out the right side, you're going to be able to get a glimpse looking down in here to see how deep this goes. So keep looking right about here. Check that out, okay? And you still can't see down to the river bed, okay? Now, if you look at that sheer wall and up to the right, imagine in the old days you're just cruising along in your horse and wagon and you come to something like that. Yeah, you got a big problem. That's when the wagon master goes, well, Pete, I hope you got a plan B, you know? And of course, this all enters into the Grand Canyon. So, you know, it was a challenge before they figured out how to get around all these deep canyons, because you really don't see them until you come right up to the edge. So that road that we were just on, 89, before it was the Mexico to Canada highway, it was the old Lee's Ferry wagon road right up to the early 1900s. And it was the first road, and still is, east of the Grand Canyon that gets you north to Utah. Today to the west, you got to go all the way out to Vegas and around Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam and to get up to Utah. So even today, with all the modern technology, you got to go around the Grand Canyon. There's no way they could have put a bridge over it or a tunnel under it. You're going to either go around it or get yourself a mule or some hiking boots. There's another way to get across it. A little bit of evasion on our
What did
way
your
up
car
here.
do? Did it itself?
Yeah, he just.
I saw that, you know.
Yeah. Well, this has, you know, all the bells and whistles.
But it didn't do it itself. You still.
No, that did it itself.
Oh,
No, that
it
was because
avoided
that guy
him.
stopped
Yeah, I
short
saw
in front
that,
of me,
yeah, I saw that.
and I had to maneuver around him. So we got
Yeah.
close enough that it set off the
Wow.
alarm. That's
Cool.
yeah, it's a pretty
You
handy
don't have to
thing to
drive
have.
anymore. Just let the car do it.
Almost, you know.
Yeah.
It's got sensors in the mirrors too that tell you when somebody's right beside you. So,
Wow. That's nice.
yeah, there's.
It's a brand new one, huh?
Yeah, this one is brand spanking new.
2024?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Like that. So we're going to do about 45 minutes at this first stop. I give you a little bit of extra time, so you might be able to have time to go up in the tower. There's steps that go up to the top, but it depends. If we have a bunch of tour buses that show up, they each carry 50 people, then it usually they limit the number of people. Since COVID, they've limited it to like 20 people every 20 minutes. And it's just kind of hit or miss. When we get there, if you walk down to the tower, they have a volunteer in the Kiva room. That's where the steps are. And they'll let you know when the next group goes up. What they've been doing lately is just they got a counter, and as people come down, they let other people go up.
What is the point of looking up the tower?
So, well, it's just interesting to see some of the paintings in there. Now, as far as an extra view, you're already on the highest point on the south rim of the Grand Canyon at this viewpoint. We're going to be at 7,500 feet. So going up another 80 feet, it's not going to really, extend your view that much more. So if you don't have time to go up in there, no worries, you're going to get great photos all around. Now you can always go to the Kiva room, and there's a little gift shop and all there. No shortage of gift shops, I can tell you. Now, between here and the village, it's a little sparse, mostly just overlooks. There's restrooms at this first stop, and then there's a little break in restroom action until we get over to the village area. So I want to make sure you use the restroom here before we head out, because we're going to do Lippin Point after this, and then we'll have lunch at Moran Point. And I'll check in with you there if we're needing a break. There's a spot we can stop. But the thing is, along a lot of the rim, all they have is pit toilets. Now, they do have flush toilets up here. I just mentioned that because I'm a married guy, and my wife is not a big fan of this pit toilets, right? So,
Bodies away.
no, they're not porta potties. It's a little building, but they're not flush toilets.
Oh.
It's basically
Okay.
just a pit.
Okay.
It's a glorified porta potty,
Yeah.
basically. Hey, they serve the purpose, you know.
Exactly.
And they usually do a pretty decent job of
We
keeping them.
use them up at the.
Yeah, this loops around this way. So they both come around the same way. There's the first glimpse of the Grand Canyon right there. Let's just go around it. This would be a fun place to bring a younger dog in. Yeah, puppy. Here's the first glimpse. Right there. You got the trading post. Building there. Yeah, we. Huh?
Let's look everywhere for it.
General store where? Oh, in there, back there. We'll go check in that in a second. We want to go check out the tower, see if we can get in there. Turn this off to conserve battery.
We're estimating that we'll reopen about 10:40.
Okay.
So if you can keep occupied until then.
20 more minutes?
Looking at this
Okay.
beautiful canyon.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying for.
Does it take to go? Is it just your own time up and down?
It is. It's self-guided. You'd
Okay.
have 15 to 20 minutes up in the tower.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, there's an open observation area, and then within
Oh, I
the
see.
tower it's 4 levels. So
So-
you can do it as fast as you like.
We'll be back for our bus tour by 11.
Got
Or
it.
10:55. But
10:55.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So we have time to
come back. Yeah,
Oh, I think so. I mean, I'm hoping so.
Yes.
Thank you. Tons of there's the river.
¿O tiene 25 centavos?
Wow, that's amazing looking that way, isn't it?
Oh, there it is.
Tienes que ponerle
Yeah, it's running.
y girarlo.
Don't bump into me, I'll drop my phone. I'm holding on to it very well. It's hard to take it all in. And take a selfie. Look at all the little. It'd neat to see a drone view of the canyon bottom. That'd be neat. Little birds.
Turn around. Let's get our picture.
Yeah. All right. Draw the-
Or something. I always have to like decide on everything.
They were in called a Whitehall boat. So that's the boat they used to use like 700.
You'll see those throughout the canyon. Those are dry washes that will run during the monsoons. And they can run pretty good. You gotta be careful where you hike it. Especially during the monsoon period.
Not for the faint of heart, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's see. Let's talk about how this big hole in the ground got to be here.
Right.
So, a couple of things that work here. All right. I like to call what happened here the perfect geologic storm, meaning everything happened in just the right sequence for this canyon to be here. And it involves the lifting of the Colorado Plateau and the downcutting of this river, the Colorado River. The history of what you see out here, it's been either at sea level or submerged under shallow tropical seas. So it's only been in ways higher than this side. It just doesn't look like it.
Oh,
But you'll
okay.
see that chopper, he's maintaining a consistent altitude. Okay, once he gets over there, he'll kind of disappear in front of the North Rim.
Those Grand Canyon tours, those are all
Yeah,
about,
that's
or-
Grand Canyon Papillon helicopters.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of the day, when we're actually leaving,
Just going up and around. It's kind of cool. Let's go back over to the edge. Huh? Huh?
So we can't step over, I guess, get closer.
I think he was talking about that other one though.
9 ore avanti. Ah, è vero.
I think he was talking about this wall over here to go back toward the lunch spot. Wow.
Dai, ciao, ciao, ciao. Perché qua siamo dentro, siamo nel National Park. Paghi $35 per entrare ogni auto.
I know, right? That's crazy. This one here dead.
Di avvistamento per fare le foto, poi torni dietro
This one's holding on. Holding on.
e Ciao Giuseppe. Salutami tu, salutami tutti. Ciao,
Yeah, because my neck, I think my neck's already
non sei andato a
starting.
ballare, non sei andato a ballare.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Ah, com'è andata?
Yeah, my neck is, I think, starting to burn.
Vabbè dai, piano piano. Ok. Ciao, 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 buona vacanza. Buona vacanza.
Yeah.
Not from this.
I wonder what they rate those.
That's a pretty big hole. Oh, I got yours.
Yeah.
And that's 7,200 feet. Now, they don't allow rock climbing here because it's very unstable rock, the sedimentary rock. And they've had to outlaw all kinds of stuff: squirrel suits, hang gliding, you know, base jumping, you name it, because everybody and their brother would be here trying it. And remember, already they have to do 250 search and rescues a year. I would probably double it, you know.
At least.
Get guys down there and they land in the trees, can't find a way out.
There in a squirrel suit. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's really dangerous because we get very unpredictable wind.
Yeah.
That's another reason that chopper pilots don't operate anywhere near the rim. Yeah, I mean, you could get a 50-mile-an-hour gust down over. It's
Cold.
Now, also notice here, you're not seeing any river, right? Because we're now far enough around on the south rim. It's out there. It's just 1,400 feet down in the bedrock in the inner gorge. So the namesake of this viewpoint is right in front of us,
What?
the Duck Rock, but the bill is laying down to the right.
Oh, wow, yeah.
The very top rock is sticking off, facing out to the right. So it's like a profile. But I'll tell you what,
I don't
if
see
you
it.
look at that formation and you look at that top
I mean, I
rock,
see it, but I don't
like
see
it's
it.
a person's head,
Yeah.
sideways
Where you see it,
profile,
right.
and they're looking to the right with the sun hitting their face.
there's
You know, I
his
see
head.
a bit of a familiar looking face in there.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's got a prominent chin, likes cars a lot, used to host late night TV. Remember old Jay Leno?
Oh, yeah.
It's the chin. The chin gives
The
him
Jay
away.
Leno
Some
rock.
people see Darth Vader looking the other way. Let your imagination go wild, just like kids looking at clouds in the
Yeah,
sky. Same
exactly.
thing. We do that with rocks at the Grand Canyon. So now that we've come right here, once we get to a step, they don't really actually have steps in here. Good.
All right.
All right, we're gonna just step down right here. I gotta hand it to you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. I hope you do. You're very welcome. Thank you. We're going by. All right. Yeah, watch yourself there. We're going by.
Let me sit. I like this little basket. It's very expensive.
How much is it? Get it if you want it. Go get it.